I remember with Spurgeon, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he was one of the preachers of his day as well, who
Mm-hmm.
pushed back against evolution when evolution at the time was, this is sure ball, right? This is,
Yep.
and then
Yep.
so a lot of the pastors at the time, well, this is what science is saying, and this is what the scientists are saying. So I guess we're going to have to ditch Genesis. And, a lot of the pastors in that day went that liberal route. And it was only, years later that, um, specifically Darwin's theory of evolution would get challenged, right? And it to this day
Yep.
is still a theory. And so I was thinking, I wonder if 100 years from now we're going to be able to say, yeah, there is a possibility that there is a historical Adam, scientifically, biologically.
Mm.
Maybe we're just not there yet. In the same manner that a lot of the pastors in Spurgeon's days might not have been able to defend against evolution, but now we
Right.
could, right? Yeah. So, wow. Yeah, that's brilliant. Yeah. Sorry, you had
Thank
some
you.
thoughts on that? Yeah.
Welcome to the Revo Report. We're inspiring faith with reason and reasoning with faith.
Well, you raised some really interesting things there. I think I know what Spurgeon meant. He means the word stands on its own 2 feet. You don't have to add anything to the Bible to persuade people of its veracity. I fully
Yes.
agree with that. I think that's his basic point there in what you quoted.
Yeah.
You do, though, you are called in 1 Peter 3:15. I always think this when people quote Spurgeon there. I adore Spurgeon. He's probably the most, I don't know the right term here, story shared person for me on Instagram, where I follow this account. I don't even know who runs it. Spurgeon Books, I think it's called. And they have like 6 quote graphics every 4 hours, and I share them like they're candy. So I adore Spurgeon. I was at the Metropolitan Tabernacle a month ago in London for the first time.
Oh, wow.
And got to visit.
Yeah.
So I revere Spurgeon. 1 Peter 3:15 tells us to make a defense for the hope that is within us, doing so with gentleness and respect. By the way, we completely sometimes forget about gentleness and respect.
Second part of it, yeah.
Yeah, we can't forget that. We all do. I do sometimes. But we have to actually make a defense for the Christian faith, which I think you believe in and I believe in. And yes, you have to do that in the face of very strong doubt. Most pastors are not going to be able to become experts in geologic science or, hereditary lineage or something like this. So I want to say a word of affirmation to pastors who are like, how am I supposed to handle every, apologetic challenge to the nth degree? You're not. This is why God gave you a Bible. You stand on the Bible. You try to think well. You try to reason well. You do read books as you're able. You do listen to podcasts. You do get equipped as a generalist, a theologian generalist. There's a hyphen there. On every issue, you can. Curiosity is a wonderful and good thing. You're not a Bible onlyist. You're a Bible centrist. But fundamentally, God hasn't asked you to become an expert in geologic science in order to establish the smart kids in your congregation in the Christian faith. If that's what God had done, we would do it. God gave us the Word of God, and what pastors, I'm talking about pastors here, and parents, what we do as normal Christians. There's a place for the scientist who is a Christian to go and get a PhD in these things and make the best arguments they can. That's beautiful and great. Most Christians, though, are never going to get that level of training. They're never going to have that degree of intellectual sophistication. And what they need to do is train people in trusting the Bible. Is it hard to understand light reaching the earth? Is it hard to understand how there could be a flood in certain ways? Is it hard to understand miracles? Yes, all those things are hard to understand. When were the dinosaurs here? Lots and lots and lots of questions. We're not supposed to, though, last thing, we're not supposed to major in the darkness. We're not supposed to major on the minors. We're not supposed to staple our faith to what is less clear. We are supposed to put our feet on what is most clear and reason from there. And know that if we try to start with the less clear things, this is a shaky operation. If we start on the most clear things, that is the Bible, biblical truth, biblical doctrine, and yes, there are hard questions out there. We don't have to wave a hand at that or get angry at people who say, there are hard questions. How do you reconcile sovereignty and free will? We don't have to get angry at people and burn them down on X. We can say, Christians need permission to do this. I'm sorry, I'm going on here, Vince, but here's permission. Here's permission to say, in the home, in a conversation, in evangelism, and building a relationship with your skeptical neighbor or coworker, that's a good question. That's a hard question. I'm not all-knowing. I know the gospel, I know Jesus, I know the Bible to a degree. I think I can give you absolute truth in those areas. I think you're smarter than me on this, if that's true. I think you know more. But what I would do is I would say the sure thing about you is not, how light reaches the earth from just different galaxies or something like this. It is your soul, it is your standing before God. Let's start with the most clear, and then let's give it time to deal with the less clear.
Yes. Wow. Yeah, that's good. Never thought about it that way. To quote C.S. Lewis again, he says the most brutal experience is the most brutal of teachers. But you learn, my God, do you learn? In juggling so much, Owen, what have been maybe some of the challenges recently that you've gone through or currently working out? I love how you're so vulnerable, right? I grew up in a day and age when pastors preached, and when you heard people talk on the pulpit, they never shared their vulnerability, right? It was always just like, there's a halo behind them and they were perfect. They never went through struggles or temptations or anything. And I think we've moved into a day and age where, theologians, scholars, and leaders like yourself are showing that vulnerability so that people can know that, oh, wow, they're human. I can relate to them. So yeah, I'd like to know, maybe some of the things like experience where you did really grow out of it, either through your writings, public statements, in these engages, maybe in some of your leadership roles. Anything that you can share with us?
Oh, how much time do we have? Yeah, it would take me a long time to talk about how I have been grown by God and humbled by God. And Hebrews 12, it's hard to say this, even as a years-long Christian, disciplined by God for my good and his glory. But I think we're coming out of, as you rightly said, an era where we treated Christian leaders, preachers, teachers, missionaries, whoever else, presidents of schools or whatever, like they were effectively super Christians. There is not a single super Christian on the choose whatever term you want. There is not a super Christian walking this planet. That even goes back to the apostles. I think some of this grounds, some of that attraction towards super Christianity, super Christian leaders, I think it's grounded in a wrong understanding of biblical leaders. I was getting at this a little bit with talking about Peter. Peter is an apostle. Yeah. And Peter has the distinct joy of anybody almost in Scripture, aside from maybe David and a few others, who is a truly faithful man, commended for many things, and yet gets to have a number of his sins put in a book that we are reading and talking about, 2,000 years later, or David's case about 3,000 years later. I mean, we don't want anybody at small group or Bible study at the church with 60 people there. We don't want them to know our wife and us had a bit of a tense moment, or the kids were upset at each other in the car on the van drive over to the meeting. We don't even want to show that. Let alone David committing adultery and having the wife's husband murdered, or Peter denying Christ 3 times, whatever it is. So I think, Vince, this is a huge subject, but I think we are rightfully taking down the false idol of the super Christian ministry leader. I don't think that means then you become a bleeding heart Christian leader who only talks about everything going wrong in your life. I wouldn't ricochet to that extreme on the other side. I would just say, let's be who we are, and let's work in appropriately and carefully into our preaching and teaching and public ministry and podcasts and fatherhood and motherhood and whatever it is, evangelism, discipleship. Let's make clear that we are not a super Christian, whether we have a big platform or not. You can do this just as much in a Bible study with 6 people. They can look at you. You don't have any online platform. They can look at you like, oh, you hung the moon yesterday. No, you didn't. You can have a church of 75 people. You have no online platform. You're not even on sermon audio. They can look at you like you walk, in the garden in the morning in unveiled purity. No, you don't. You get cranky. You get upset. You have your sin patterns. You can be proud. You can be anxious. You can all the things. So and in doing so, I've been influenced by Paul Tripp, who I mentioned earlier. I just would, somebody who wants to get out, Vince, of a mindset of kind of super Christianity or legalism or follow the formulas to successful Christianity, read some Paul Tripp, Get his new devotional, daily gospel, everyday gospel. He's not perfect as a theologian, just like I'm not, but in terms of applying the doctrine of sin and the doctrine of grace to everyday Christian living, I don't know of anyone better. So I would just say, take that gospel pill every day and stop pretending you're not a sinner. And stop pretending grace was just to get you saved back in 1976. No, you need grace every bit as much today as a Christian as you did the day you got saved.